Yo, I think we are, I think I'm on here. I hit the start button a little bit too quickly, so let me just do a couple things. Make sure that we're rocking and rolling, but I think we are. And, yeah, there we go. I'm on my own today, so we'll just see how I do and what happens and how I make sense of things. But I think I got it. I put the big boy pants on, and I think I'm ready to rock and roll. So if someone can just put in the chat if you can hear me well enough, and then I'm good. All right. Man, holy smokes. All right, there we go. Yeah, you can hear me well. All right, sorry about that. My phone rang. Man, it's hard to be by myself. Like, I got my phone's ringing, things are dinging, things are happening that I can't figure out or that I can't predict, and whatever. It's all good. Hang on, let me just go here and get it all ready. All right. So anyway, we have we're coming down to the end of the semester, and I don't know if anyone's into astrology, but if you are into astrology, so the astrologists say there is we're in some times of great turmoil, and right now, this week in particular, I'm not. I find it really fascinating. So if you're into that, yeah, we're in some very stressful times. So anyway, I'm keeping myself very level-headed. Yeah, I would say mythology and astrology definitely go hand in hand. Yep, I would say that. So listen, I want to say a few things about the past few classes and about where we're going and what I'm thinking and how I'm thinking. And I'm really gonna rely on the chat for some questions, okay? And I'll try to really keep track of it so that I can really respond to them, because I don't have anything else to do. I don't even have the questions that people were asking on the stream, so I have nothing, which is better, actually. So listen, last class was really very interesting for me, talking with students who are connected to the LGBT community, Q plus community, which I think is kind of interesting, like if you think about it, all the alphabets, like people make fun of it, LGBTQA, whatever. The plus is just everything that we can't identify. But, as a sociologist, we do the same thing in cities, right? Like you take New York City, we got the East Side, then we got the Upper East Side, then we got the Lower East Side, then you got Central Park East, and then you have this and you have that. And so when you talk to New Yorkers, it's like they break everything into these what they claim to be very distinct neighborhoods. But for me, when I'm in New York, I'm like, look, I go one neighborhood to the next. They basically all look the same, and they're not that important for outsiders. But for insiders, they are. And so, so they make these deep distinctions, adds to the residents of any city. Chicago, it doesn't matter, very much. Any city, it doesn't matter. Every city I've ever been in. So, in a way, that's what we do with demography, right? With our demographics. And so, you have the Irish and the Irish Americans, and then you have Sicilian Americans and Sicilians, and you got and people start breaking, Italy, you start breaking it around, right? Italians, Sicilians, and so I don't know. It's just similar. So when I see that with the LGBTQ plus community, and I see all the letters of the alphabet and different people who are represented, in a way, it's people helping themselves and also the rest of us to just sort of make these distinctions that are really demographic, and they're less. And their identity also, but they're also very demographic. So it's pretty cool. If you think about it, all right. So anyway, it was a cool conversation. And I really enjoyed it, and I was pushing back on students a lot, but I think. Wait, hang on, Angela Haskins. What do we see differently? Like, put one thing out there that we see differently, that you see differently than me. Let me see it, because I am curious about that. So take your time and write something in a way that I'll really get it. Okay, so as I was thinking about like Project 2025 or 2024, whatever it is, 2025. And what people are saying about, we're sort of losing our moral compass. And so, we need to give the executive branch more power. And then, of course, we need to build our country more around a Christian moral ethos, which I find very interesting, right? That it just becomes, because as each year passes, fewer and fewer people here in the United States identify as Christian, and not because we have more immigrants who are not Christian. Part that, but less that, and more just people not identifying really in a Christian way. And the majority of people who are identifying in a Christian way or as Christians aren't really, by self-admission, are not really that Christian. So church attendance has gone down, and all sorts of things, right? So I'm not really. It's a very complex thing to make the argument that we are a Christian nation. Yeah. Well, okay, Angela, hang on. I'm more liberal. Okay, give me an example of a liberal mindset. Maybe it would be this idea of the alphabet letters. I think I have a more sociological mindset. So, for example, when I think about, let me just stick with this example. The queer community kind of self-identifies in so many different groups grabbed onto a letter of the alphabet. And it's like, okay, all right, that makes sense. Like, I hear that. Some people just say queer, and queer is everything. Some people are like, look, man, it's mostly gay and lesbian. That's the vast majority. Well, and now increasingly bi. So it's gay, lesbian, bi, and then everybody else. That really gets you the vast majority of people. Gay, lesbian, and bi gets you 90% of people, right? Who are part of the queer community. But, people start, I don't know, like breaking it down, right? I don't do that in my language. So if I'm talking, for example, I just say queer community. Now, in class, it's a little bit different. I was kind of going back and forth, but it's just because I don't have time for all the letters, and I don't know what they all mean. And I don't know I don't know who I'm leaving out. And so it's like, okay, so I just say queer, right? And on one hand, it can be it's not frustrating because it doesn't really matter. But if someone comes back and says like, "Oh my God, you left out this group," or "I'm not included in that. You have to use my letter of the alphabet," I'll just throw my hands up in the air and be like, "Come on, seriously, really?" I don't play those games. I'm just not really into that stuff. So I'll do the queer piece. But then when I think about it, I think, well, hang on, how different is this, right? So then right there, I was just thinking about like New York City. And I'm like, well, that's how New Yorkers do, or Chicagoans, or people in LA, or Bogota, or Seoul, or whatever. It's like, I'm going to be in Seoul next month, and I'm going to this one part of the city, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's a neighborhood. No, it's actually considered not just a neighborhood. I'm like, wait, but it's Seoul, right? It's right in the middle of Seoul. Yeah, it is, but we call it this. I'm like, well, wait, why do you call it that? It doesn't make sense to me, right? And then right next to it is a place where people would just refer to as Seoul. I mean, like, why are you making these distinctions here? But they do. So similar with the queer community, why are you making all these distinctions, man? Just like whatever. What is it? It is what it is. So but we do that. And so I'm like, okay. And Ireland, Ireland's a very small country, but man, there are these areas of Ireland that Irish are very distinct about how they see it, and very distinct. And I'm like, yeah, but you're just Irish, why are you? So anyway, I see that as a sociological thing. Just my curiosity starts looking around to see how other people do it. It's not a defense of people in the queer community. I don't care about that. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I don't care about that. I'm not trying to be not that I don't care about people in the queer community, but I mean, that's just not what drives me. What drives me is my sociological mind. And so my mind starts saying, wait, but queer people are doing kind of what everybody else is doing, so why get on their cases about the queer alphabet, and not do the same thing elsewhere? So anyway, that doesn't strike me as a liberal thing. It just strikes me as a sociological thing. So anyway, that would be a thing. Where somebody else on the outside might think I'm trying to be liberal because I'm trying to be like whatever with LGBT community, and I'm not. I'm just being a sociologist. So anyway, that would be it as an example. Strawberry Kings, we're killing it, man. All right. Okay. So anyway, yesterday. The more people I know, the more I don't want to be social. Wait, I think I was responding to Angela. Was I responding to Angela about saying more liberal mindset? Yeah. Well, okay, Angela, so you got to respond to that, what I just said there. Would that be a kind of thing that somebody would say, yeah, Sam's being kind of liberal, when in fact I'm not being liberal, I'm just being a sociologist. So I'm just holding these two things up together. Yeah, and by the way, life number 9, most gay people hate that alphabet thing. You know what I mean? So that's why I don't really use it. Or if I do, I just stop LGBT. I stop right there, so, or LGB, So anyway, watching from India. Yo, welcome, man. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, you were responding to me. And I have more understanding now. I appreciate that, Sam. Yeah, Angela. Yeah, I think actually so much of the kinds of ideas I have, so many of them are really sociological and they're not liberal. The problem is when you start talking about these issues that liberals think about a lot or have really pushed forward, some of what people are pushing forward makes, of course, it's the same with conservatives. Some of what people are saying makes a lot of sense. So for example, conservatives are like, look, we need to have more certainty of sort of some kind of morality or moral codes that we have more agreement upon and more of a shared understanding. And since the majority of people in the U.S. are Judeo-Christian in their orientation, oh man, come on, Mr. B. Then let's make it a Judeo-Christian moral order that we're sort of working with and seeing, and through which we're seeing the world. So okay, that makes sense. I see that. I mean, I get it. It's a similar thing, but that doesn't make me conservative. It's just yeah, all right, that's a decent argument. But of course, then I would turn around and say, yeah, but you know what? That moral order has really, first off, it always really, I mean, it's always relative, right? It didn't come into, I don't think that, well, I don't know. It clearly was being misaligned during all the years of so much segregation and discrimination and so on of the nation. But still, people are doing their best, But then I think right now, something I did say in class, people are like, well, young people are being harmed by having so much exposure to queer issues and including trans issues at such a young age, right? So they're going to be more inclined to experiment or to just different things, right? It's like, well, okay, first off, the exposure is coming on the phones, as a couple of my students said. So it's it's not about schools, and they all said yesterday, look, we didn't get hardly anything in schools. We have this idea from the outset. Some schools obviously are really pushing something, but putting a book in the library about Hannah has two moms. That's not really much activism. That's just a damn book in the library, man. That's not like the school is all completely gay friendly, because if they don't have a social club for queer students, if they're not offering more than a half of a day in a social sciences class about LGBT issues, right? Then it's not it's not really that gay friendly. Like, what the hell? What's going on? That makes the school like pushing an agenda. There's a book in the library that most kids aren't going to have any interest in whatsoever, until somebody from the outside or some parent comes in and starts demanding that they pull that book off the library shelf. And then students are going to be like, oh, hang on, I got to read that. If all these people are saying it's harmful to me, I'm going to read it. Just like if you're saying that smoking tobacco is harmful to me, that makes me curious about it. Or weed or alcohol or whatever the case is, right? Or sex, how about that? So anyway, and so you gotta grant that happens. Kids are pretty inquisitive, and they're definitely, most kids, not all, but most of them are certainly inquisitive. My wife wasn't, by the way, but most kids are going to be inquisitive about the things that adults tell them they shouldn't do or they shouldn't be part of or whatever. So the lack of a moral code, the problem is it's really difficult to have any kind of shared agreement. So I'll give you a very simple one. You think about the moral code and you think about, a lot of people saying it should be around a Christian order. Well, then the same people there's a photo coming out of the White House of people laying their hands on President Trump. And then you take like the Epstein files and everything that is all of that, which, by the way, that is not a nothing burger, and it's holy smokes. You think about the things that President Trump said about the Pope. You think about just what he said about bombing Iranians to nothingness. I would say that it quite undermines a Judeo-Christian moral order. To have your leader making such bold statements and not demanding, hey, we got to get to the bottom of this Epstein thing and we got to figure it out and we got to root all the evil and we got to get rid of it. I'm not hearing that. And if I'm a kid, that's telling me like, hey, well, I guess, this kind of thing with children and Epstein is, I guess it doesn't matter since all these rich and powerful people have been part of it, at least what I'm hearing, and only one of them seems to have gone to prison, and that's Maxwell, so everybody else seems to be okay. So that undermines a moral order just as far, in my humble opinion, far more so than putting a book, Hannah Has Two Moms, in the library of the 7th and 8th grade school, So that's my own personal opinion, but, I would say that. Yeah, America was always like that. Yeah, no, I know. I'm trying to be thoughtful about it. Look, every country is. There's what a moral order. Countries commit crimes. You look back at countries and they commit crimes. And of course they do. There's bad things happen, and that's the nature of it. And people justify those bad things. And so it's easy to look back and see that. It's harder to look around right now and ask ourselves, wait, which things am I selectively seeing are a problem, are immoral? Is it the fact that we're not getting to the bottom of the Epstein files? Or is it the fact that Heather Has Two Moms is a book at the local library that kids have access to? Which one is more important? Which one am I going to focus on? And so, that's the problem. I can look back and see that as a problem. I can look forward and think, wow, we can really get a very clear vision of moral codes and a moral order. We can do that. We're going to be capable of doing that, as opposed to, you know what, man, we're never going to agree on any of this stuff. So, hey, I don't know about Maxwell. I don't know where she is. I mean, I'm assuming the video of laying of hands is just pure. Well, it makes me wonder, man. You know what I mean? It does make me wonder about some things. Yeah. I don't know. Just like, it's like the Pope. The Pope should stay out of this business. Dude, the Pope's business is morality, is God. So you can't tell the Pope to you should stop thinking about morality, especially when he's an American Pope. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, that is the Pope's business. So, if you you got a problem with that, then like, oh man, holy smokes. Yeah, by the way, I was last minute getting online because we had to get our taxes in. Yeah. Listen, man, Strawberry Kings. Yeah, they're not releasing all the files. Well, who knows what the files even are, but I spent a few hours listening to a few long podcasts written, by the one lawyer who Brad something, I forget his name, but he's the very first lawyer that moved on this. Like, man, if you don't, most people are just going to get bits and pieces of the Epstein stuff because that's what we do. Like, we don't have time, man. We don't have time. But I'm telling you, man, if you want get into some murky reading and some really evil, problematic things, and corruption at a deep level. Listen to some of the really long interviews with people who have been journalists and the lawyers who have been deeply involved in the Epstein case for 2 decades, almost 2 decades. It's pretty unsettling. It's very unsettling, actually, what happened, and it makes me really, it's not a surprise to me just how much deep corruption there is, but it makes me really feel deeply unsettled, man. Yeah, some really powerful men and women enablers. Maxwell isn't the only one. But yeah, there's a lot of folks in there, man. It's really, yeah, man. Anyway, so hang on, let me translate this Korea comment. All right. Let me see if I can translate it. All right, here we go. Hold on. The politics of philosophy has gone infiltrated by religion. A philosopher who was Jewish but was a writer who criticized the Jewish self and lived in the Iowa maker all his life after the books. Okay, that's one of those things I don't know exactly what that says. I'd have to speak Korean fluently for that. But anyway, so I didn't kind of dig into that in class yesterday. I just really wanted to let students talk for themselves. And I thought they did a really nice job, just kind of wrestling with things. And I think that one thing that's kind of interesting is that all of them said, and this is what I see talking to everybody, all of them said, hey, this queer agenda idea, it's not pushed at us in schools. It wasn't pushed at any of us. So I'm sure there are people in my class who went to a school where they felt like it was really pushed more onto them. But if that was the case, I have to say probably it was a teacher or a small group of student activists or something like that. Not in an entire school system. Certainly some school systems. I don't have a doubt about that. But I never see it talking to students, and I ask people a lot of questions about that. So. So anyway, that's kind of revealing. And secondly, it's like people just really wanting to live their lives, man. They're not. There's just so little activism that happens at a place, at a big university like a Penn State. First off, there's so little activism that happens at any university, almost anywhere in the world, except in very brief periods of time. There was a lot of activism in Taiwan for a hot minute when China was really kind of digging in some ways, or in Indonesia, students have been activated. I mean, there are all sorts of things, but mostly there's very little activism happening. So you just really have to, you've got to, you just got to walk around universities on a fairly regular basis and see that people are just like got their heads down trying to figure out whatever they need to see. All right, Matt. Yeah, I was hoping maybe you could work on that for me. yeah. But anyway, okay. So let me see. Hey, by the way, it'd be really nice if those of you in the chat, by the way, were kind to one another today. Maybe ask me some questions. I'm really curious. Yeah. Yeah, well, we also expanded. Hang on, Ian, man. We expanded militarily after World War II, also very much out of our self-interest, man. And yeah, anything we do is you're going to do out of our self-interest. So, putting military bases all over the world, and forming these tight relationships with allies and making sure they have weapons and making sure they're doing the kinds of things we want them to do. Yeah. Biomod. Yeah, I know, man. I know. Yeah, my hopes and dreams, they're spoiled on a regular. The internet chat rooms, in a way, are places where you can lose your faith in humanity at regular intervals. Like depending on how active the chat is, it might be every 30 seconds or so. Hang on, I don't chat a lot live. Well, I never chat live because I don't watch anything live. Thanks for this question, Eric. I don't think we're going to get out very easily. Well, I think we're going to get out because Trump, the administration realizes we've got to get out. We can't have this this block of oil not going around the world. This is really deeply problematic for the global economy, man. You can't do that. And while the United States, it's fine. We're fine right now because we're basically energy independent. And we can survive quite well. We have access to as much oil as we want now, especially in Venezuela and Canada and the U.S. But all these, it's a global economy. Everything is interconnected. So I think what would normally be a quagmire, my gut feeling is like, they're going to just kind of settle things down fairly quickly, and we have to move on. So we're going to come up with some kind of agreement. I don't think the current administration. Well, first off, I don't think sending Jared Kushner over there is. I'm just like, my mind just gets blown when I think about some of these folks. Knowing what I know about these kinds of negotiations that happen from career diplomats in the State Department, and how much that is not going on. It's also happening. I mean, most people in the State Department haven't left. They're still there. But how much is just Trump and his team just going off on their own wayward ways, thinking that, hey, this is going to work. I know, Trump, like, I know how to make this work. I'm going to just frighten them to death. And it's like, that doesn't work, man. That's not how this is. And this isn't like the mafia in, the Lower East Side in New York City 60 years ago, man. That's not what this is. So when you go in thinking you're going to play that game, it's not going to happen like that. So, but anyway, I feel like we're just going to settle things out, and we're going to back down, but things may just go back to where they have been, because we'll just get involved in something else. So that's my gut feeling. I think the problem is people don't understand this global economy, man. Like when China slows down, we slow down. So China's is so dependent on oil coming from the Middle East. So is Korea. Korea gets 70% of its oil from Persian Gulf. And Korea right now is in deep troubles because of energy and because of oil. And so is China. And so is Japan, so is Vietnam, Cambodia, these emerging economies that are really strong. And they start to slow down. And it's like it's when the economy is like a traffic jam. One person taps their brakes, and it has this rippling effect that goes on it can go on for a kilometer or 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, all because one person tapped their brakes. And it takes a long time for that to clear out. And so, that's how the economy is. I mean, you start slowing a little bit, and things can very quickly be quite problematic. So, okay, what do I expect? Nikki Finicki. I love that. All right, I'm curious about what the professor expects race relations between whites and blacks and immigrants in 10 years. It'd be much worse. Yeah. No, I actually don't. I feel like right now we're in kind of this period of where people who are, so here's what I'm seeing. I was listening to this thing recently that got me to this idea. People who identify as more conservative, again, that doesn't mean they're more conservative. They just identify that way. So red people who, and it's just like blue people. Blue people, identify as blue people and more liberal or whatever. But look, in most of what you think, it overlaps with red people for the vast majority of people. So anyway, the red people feel like this diversity, liberal, whatever it is, DEI agenda just has been cranking full speed for 20 and 30 years, right? It started really picking up in the 90s, and it's just been going full throttle, right? Slowly, but it's been going, and so people feel like, okay, this is just, some of this stuff, it just went too far, right? So what people are doing, who are now getting in control, and you got Donald Trump, who's basically giving people a certain an opportunity now to speak up, right? Like you can't just do, or to put some new things in place. You can't just do the same policies as you were doing in the past. Like you can't have a special group that gets special favor for black and brown people or gay people or whatever. Like you just can't do that. Like it's just like you can't try to rectify inequality with coming up with something else, right? Anyway, that's the idea. So people are now coming up with these new things. We're going to rewrite the textbook. It got way out of hand, and we're going to rewrite it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about slavery and black people, and instead of just talking about slavery, like that whole section about slavery, you can just keep it in there. It's not. You can't radicalize the slave system in the United States, man. You just talk about it. It's how many pages do you want to put to it? Like, do you want to dedicate to it? But honestly, you can't make it radical left. It is what it is. So, we're how are you going to? Liberals didn't change history about that. About Jim Crow. Nobody came along, and they're not making up lies about it. It is what it is. But there's this, I was reading, in the school system, but they're put in these textbooks that, we don't know the history of Africans before they were brought to the United States. What do you mean we don't know? The implication is that, they were, we don't, first off, once they got here, we don't know, were they slaves? Were they servants? Were they this? Were they that? It's actually a real murky picture. And that is what this is this idea. It's not very murky, but you start rewriting in ways that are really stupid. Don't say this. We know exactly we have a very good idea about the social systems in Africa. And yes, there was people owning or controlling other people. We didn't call it slavery. You called it just the social system. So, for example, people, when you live in small systems and life expectancy is very short, it's you're constantly you go into battle, and you don't slaughter every single person. Healthy human beings are really valuable. So you bring them into your community. So throughout most of human history, except in some situations, people, you go to battle and then you just combine your groups together or whatever. So that's kind of how things are. You just got to read the anthropology of hunting and gathering societies and then early agricultural societies in these systems, and it's pretty okay. So we know a lot that's going on. So when you try to rewrite the history book in the United States about slavery, and you say some stupid stuff like that's very much a problem. And so, wait, who's doing this? You know what I mean? So we have So we're gonna be in that period right now. But then what's gonna happen is things are gonna just chill out a little bit, and I think relations are gonna I think they're gonna continue to get. They're going to improve. They're definitely going to continue to improve. So anyway, Robert Harris. Everybody for the past 10 years, if you were a graduate student here at Penn State, you needed to have a statement about a DEI statement. Maybe not fully 10 years, but this ended 5 years ago, or 4 years ago anyway. But yeah, I started about 10 years ago, or maybe a little further, started seeing this DEI statement thing that you had to say, hey, what are you doing? What have you done to demonstrate that you're sort of aware of these kinds of issues? And I was always thinking, dude, what does this have to do with? Whatever it has to do with, I see it. If you've decided that's important to you, and it is important at a certain level. If you decide that it's important, but how important is it? That's a question. So anyway, we did have that. Yeah. So, all right, hang on. I'm looking at some stuff. That's a really good question, by the way. So black schools are getting significantly worse and will reverberate. Well, some black schools are. Other black schools are not. Remember, most Black Americans are middle class. And the majority of Black Americans are middle class, okay? Half, just assume half. And then the other half, you have people who are upper middle class and upper class, and then people who are working class and poor. But you keep in mind that the United States we are a nation of when you see a school, you can't make generalizations, man. You really got to go hang out in middle class areas and see all the people of different ancestries and backgrounds who are middle class and where things are working really well and things are perfectly fine. Science depends on books and what has been written. Bible is scientific and is a case study. Well, I'm an oldest prophet and been studying for a long time. Yeah, but I don't see the Bible as scientific. I don't see the Bible as history, personally. I don't. So, and if you do, then what probably I would recommend doing is studying people who study the earliest versions of the Bible, and they know a lot of things. Yeah, it's okay to disagree, right? But what I would say is that these guys know a lot of things. A really good person is. You can read biblical scholars of law. I mean, you probably don't want to read people they're not scholars, right? You want to do scholars. Look, I'm not a person who thinks that all scholarship has to happen at a university or everything that happens at a university is scholarship. Okay, like I don't have that, but there is a greater degree to which we are looking around and holding each other to the basic principles of the scientific method, evidence-based research. And then you got to study how you get to the evidence. And you got to you question, you just keep questioning. And the scientific method is actually quite kind of basic, right? Not basic, but it's simple. It's simple. I'm going to get back to the Bible, by the way, in a second. You form a hypothesis, right? So I'm looking at my window here, and I have this hypothesis that blue jays, I'm particularly fond of blue jays. The blue jays actually are not very aggressive compared to mourning doves, for example, or robins, right? Who I find or hummingbirds, which I find much more aggressive. Blue jays, unless you want to call noise aggressive, because blue jays just make a lot of noise, but they're actually not. When I watch them, I watch birds all day long, and I'm watching behavior, and I'm like, yeah, they're not kind of that really aggressive, but they make a lot of noise. So they have like a rap about being really aggressive. But when you watch them, right? Okay, so that's my hypothesis. Well, now I got to go out and observe. I got to collect data on that. So I can't just watch one or two blue jays. I got to go look at my blue jays. I have to look at them, observe them in different environments. I have to go elsewhere and see all these different places where blue jays might act differently and be provoked to act differently. And then I got to have this very thoughtful ways in which I measure aggression. Okay, what's that mean? Does it mean flying at a bird, and how close to a bird, and noise, and this, that, and the other thing, right? And so then I want to sort of lay out what it is that I mean by that. And then that's operationalizing my measurement. And then I demonstrate that, okay, I did a sufficient amount of observation and so on in these kinds of places, right? And then I either reject my hypothesis or I fail to reject my hypothesis, okay? This is the scientific method. I hope you're following this because this is really cool, actually. I observe what I observe with blue jays. I say, oh, look, see, that matches. They're matching what I hypothesized, that they actually don't fly at other birds and they don't demonstrate any kind of physical aggression at other birds. So I don't accept my hypothesis. I fail to reject my hypothesis because I think but that hypothesis that the blue jays are not very aggressive, I didn't prove that. I didn't do anything. I got to go now measure it differently. And then go look at other jays. And then I can see, am I going to reject it? Because I see oh my God, blue jays are really aggressive according to my standards. Or am I going to fail to accept it? And fail to accept it, you just keep failing to accept. You never accept something, right? Or fail to reject, I mean. Yeah, am I going to fail to reject? So you never accept anything. You just keep failing to reject. That's the scientific method. That's what we sort of are supposed to really be living up to here at a university. And we are going to be, the more minds are on things, the more that you have other professors around you or people, researchers around you who are looking and say, wait, hang on a second. Let me look at what's the study that you just did, and let me look at that. Let me make sure that this holds up to scrutiny. Because we're always trying to disprove or we're always... We have systems set up inside of a university where you're challenging other people, right? Now, sometimes this falls apart, but basically this is what you want to do. It's not like some, me when I'm out on some YouTube channel just yammering away about whatever I feel like talking about. Maybe it's the Epstein files, and it's no one's checking what I'm saying. So therefore, you got a lot of people who are really analyzing the early Bible. And wait, where did these original writings come from? What language were there? What's the oldest fragments that we have? Wait, hang on a second. Okay, that's the oldest. And what does it say? And wait, and then what's the next one? And wait, hang on a second. So, and then people really very thoughtful about what we know and what we don't know. And basically what you get to with these people, right? Many of whom are believers. I have fellow sociologists who are strong Christians, man. And they're yeah, well, this doesn't fit with, none of this fits with logic and history for sure. That's fine. But it's a feeling I have of Christ in my heart. It's a feeling I have, but I can't say for certain that, Jesus lived and said all the things that he said and all this kind of stuff. I don't have that, but that doesn't matter to me because I have it in here, and then my spirit feels it and says it, and so that's good enough. So I built a story about Christ, and I built that story, and I live with that story, and for me, that's great. But they don't say, when they read the historians and the biblical scholars, they don't say these guys are wrong, because they're not wrong, man. They're back. They study archaeology. You know what I mean? That's what it is. When you read them and you say oh my God, that's really amazing how much they know and how much they can say. So anyway, that's what I mean about the fact that people, the Bible isn't, it's not scholarship. It's, but it's cool. It's great stories, and it's really, but it's not, it's a scholarship per se. It's not based on science, at least. But that doesn't mean it's a problem. You know what? I feel like I'm responding to chambray or deal meal. Deal meal. I like that. A lot of kids get pushed through, man. We don't. We get pushed through systems. We don't have the answers to the big problems. Most of education, it depends so much on a family. The family's got to be there. You can't just send kids off to school and we have this idea. We send them off to school and the teachers have to do it. Are you kidding me? Have you been in a classroom recently? I mean, sometimes when you have small classes and you have great teachers, then you can really rely on teachers. But there's so many things that are happening all the time to just think like, okay, yeah, my kids should be educated. The families who are really thoughtful about it and thinking about it and talking to their kids about thinking and education, so that is so important. So kids get pushed through because you can't get inside of households. You can't get parents, you just can't, especially in communities that are more poor. And communities that are more poor are going to have people who are on average less educated and people who don't have the same experience of doing like new math or old math or whatever. And so it's like, yeah. And so schools, what are you going to do? Hold kids back? And then what are they going to do? They're going to learn better the second year or the third year they get held back? I mean, what's going to happen? Like it just doesn't. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources, or we do have the money and resources, but we don't dedicate them in that way. You know, what's Trump's latest budget? He's trying to push $1.5 billion for the Pentagon, and I'm like, wait, what? Well, what's that? Like 15 years ago, it was $500 million, and now we're $1.5 trillion. That's what it is. 1.5 trillion. 15 years ago it was 500 billion. It's like, wait, what? So yeah, we have money. We're not spending it there. Tax breaks, tax breaks for the the billionaires. It's like, oh my God, is it the billionaires earn? Like, you think for someone in 30 years to make be worth $500 billion or $300 billion in a matter of 20 years, let's say. Like, really? The system isn't stacked in a certain way. Someone didn't get access to the system and like figure out how to use the system, how to use it to their advantage. Some groups of people and like whatever. This is an economic system that's created by the Wall Street billionaire class. So we could just reshape that. And probably not lose any of the creative genius ideas that are happening around the world. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, I'm not. Hang on one second. I got to get some. I just got to. It's so complicated, man. I just get so. Sometimes I just throw my hands up in the air. To try to be in so many different places at the same time and have thoughts in so many different places at the same time. Oh, there we go, man. Gotta have this. Yeah, listen, man. If anybody is young and you play drums or loud noises, like, take care of yourself. All right, take care of your ears. It's like, hey, okay, so I want to go to Marcus the Great. Marcus the Great. Yeah. You know what? I don't. Yeah, Locke. Listen. First off, Locke is one of those people who I read about and I study, and then it leaves me. I can't remember everything. All these different people, but all of these philosophers had an impact on all of the earlier thinkers. So people like Locke and Bentham, all these philosophers, man, they were like really. Essential to building thoughts out, and you want lots of thoughts, right? We want as many thoughts as possible, and so these so-called founding fathers, these were young people, man, in this country. These are really young people, and you think about when you read some of the documents and the letters that they wrote, it's pretty damn impressive, man. It's kind of like I listen to some of the music that some of these. 1960s and 70s, in particular 70s, it's just like a classic rock time. But did some of the songs they wrote, some of the lyrics, I'm like, damn, man, how'd you write that when you were a stoned 22-year-old who, probably couldn't hardly even seem like you were head out of your rear end? But how'd you write those lyrics, man? How'd you do that? And even just simple songs. So anyway, I think that's similar to the so-called the early thinkers in U.S. history. Yeah. In Great Integros, I argue against string theory with foster children. My prof had never thought. I argued against string theory with foster children. My prof had never thought. Listen, man, we don't think about most things because I don't think about most. There's so many things happening out in the world that I can't keep track of. I'm keeping track of a huge number of them, but mostly when I'm talking about something, I'm talking about the things that I'm keeping track of. The vast majority, by far and away, those things that I keep track of are outweighed by things that I can't keep track of. All the other reality out in the world. So I'm not talking about that, all those things. So when somebody like me says, yeah, I'm really, and in a way, I'm kind of ignorant about a lot of stuff. Like, that's what we're talking about. I'm so not near where I really feel like I need to be to consider myself a pretty good thinker. And it's really hard to just keep up, man, on perspectives. I'm constantly trying to support and justify and validate different perspectives, right? So Sam, LDU Quito fan, would you say in today's society students are being told to think inside the box and not outside? No, I think that, hang on. And do you think it's time to start telling them to use imagination and creativity to solve issues? Okay, here, yes and no, okay? Yes, for sure about exams. When we put pressure on schools to say, look, you need to show us that your students are qualified to graduate or qualified to get into universities or qualified to get into the top universities or whatever it is, then basically what you're saying is we need you to be able to have very clearly measured scores and justifiably measured scores upon which we can separate students. We can rank order students, okay? So we need to know, can they do, they're graduating 6th grade, can they do 6th grade math? And I need an exam and I need you to really demonstrate, I need each student to demonstrate that they can do that. Well, basically what you've done is said, okay, well, now what we need to do is teach to those exams. Right? We need to make sure that students learn that material. So the focus then of the education process is built around learning the material that they're going to have to cover on those exams. And then it becomes the SAT exams, the ACT exams, and all over the world, people graduating high school and trying to get into college. But that's not the creative thinking, right? And so what makes us think that you need to learn 6th grade math by 6th grade? Maybe you're going to learn 6th grade math by 7th grade. But at the same time, it's like, or by 8th grade, but at the same time, well, you can't really go back and cover because you have to just keep moving forward. You can't be like, well, now we're in 8th grade. And so we have these 3 students over here that are still working on their 6th grade math. And we got these 5 students that are on their 7th grade math, but the rest of us are in the 8th grade math. So that's a problem. You can't do that. But you understand what we're doing is we're forcing us to teach to certain ideas so that you can pass through what we've decided you need to pass through. And if you don't, then we got to decide what to do with you. Well, we can't hold you back if there's a group of people because you got full classes behind you. So how many are we going to hold back? And are we going to hold them back just because they didn't pass math? What if they passed everything else, but they didn't pass math? Does that mean they don't pass 6th grade and go to 7th grade? And so like, how are you going to do that? And so the easiest thing to do is, we'll just push them through. And that's what somebody was talking about earlier. Yeah, whatever, push them through. You find some way to justify that. And then that's what it is. And then we know at some point down the road, they're going to sort of go off to the side here, and they're not going to be the ones that get into the top universities. And maybe they'll get into a community college, and then from the community college, they can go to another university or whatever. Or maybe they're going to be the electricians, or the carpenters, or the cooks, or the chefs, or do work at the recycling plant here in my town. Somebody's got to work there. You know what I mean? So, well, we need people for that. So all along the way in the educational path, different people go off in these side tracks. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, what's the problem there? You know what I mean? We don't want everyone to get 100% on all their exams, because what are you going to do? How are you going to decide who's going to be the ones that go to the Ivy League schools, or that go on to med school or law school or whatever, right? Who's going to be the person operating on your spleen? Clearly, that guy in Florida wasn't one of them. The guy that took the liver out when he was supposed to take a spleen out of somebody. That I don't understand how that could happen. Yeah. Anyway, that's a great point. I rest my case. Yeah. Yeah, all right. I don't remember what your case was, because I start talking and I have no idea what the hell I'm saying. Today's students will be told. So anyway, let me go back. Let me summarize what I just said. Yep. So they're kind of inside the box in a way. Say, hey, get in this box over here. You're going to be tested on this stuff. You need to work on it. It's a little bit of a problem. It's going to be a problem as AI picks up, because so much of that stuff that you're studying you don't really need, and including to be a good writer. Like, who cares? Like, why? I think about all the time I spent in high school, starting in sophomore and junior year, in particular sophomore year, breaking down sentences. So I knew how to put a sentence together. Well, I never learned, by the way. To this day, I don't really understand a lot. If you ask me to explain the different parts of sentences, I can't do that. But I can write quite well, because I just write all the time. So I know how to write in a very clear way, and I'm a very clear writer. But I don't know any of that. And so, and why would I need to anyway, man? You just type it into AI and have them fix it up. Like, well, why wouldn't you do that? And then take your creative ideas and direct them, your creative thinking, and direct it towards something else. Instead of, breaking down a sentence, like, okay, all right, that's cool. Like, maybe go study string. You can, when you're in 6th grade, study string theory. Someone mentioned string theory earlier. So, like, yeah, go do that. Like, go focus on, who knows? It's something else. So anyway, so we're going to have to really start to figure out how to get outside the box, really, and stay outside the box. Yeah. Writing as in fiction is a long way of, listen, in fiction it's very different, right? I mean, AI can write a fictional story. That's fine. Claude can do that. And a lot of people wouldn't know it's Claude. They really would have no idea. And I know I agree with that, but not everyone has to write fiction. Like, whatever. Most people I know aren't writing fiction, man. The guys are coming to install a new HVAC system in our house next week. Probably none of those, and I say guys because they're probably all going to be men. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 of them here because they're going to get it done pretty quickly. None of them, I'm sure, are writing fiction, nor do they care, nor do they need to. So, like, okay, like, what's the problem? It's not a big deal. So we have this idea in schools that everybody has to be cut out of a certain mold. We all have to have certain skills, but these skills are not necessary for society to function really well. Now, mind you, I watched a couple of videos of people speaking to school boards, or let's say, parents talking to school boards and like laying out the school boards, all the problems, you have. I'm like, some of those folks, I think, well, it might be nice if you could be a little bit illiterate in your thinking, because what you're saying makes no sense whatsoever. But, we're not going to fix that in school. So, Yeah. 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 Quitting school. I don't know how people quit school. It doesn't fit the mold. We don't need the mold. Yeah. Yeah. Bachelor's in creative writing. Creative writing is cool, and it's amazing, and it's unfortunate that, not unfortunate. I don't know. This is what life is, but. AI is just going to take over as it gets better. It's going to take over more and more creative writing. And okay, that's fine. And then future creative writers will be doing other things. Just like today, there aren't that many farriers in the world, i.e., people who are really taking care of horses and the health of horses and the hoofs and the horseshoes and all of these things, blacksmiths, all of this kind of stuff. There really aren't very many of them in the world today. There used to be 100 years ago or 120 years ago, there were a lot. 140 years ago, there were a hell of a lot. But today there aren't. So we don't look back and be like, oh my God, it's so sad. There are all these farriers. These people are no longer learning the trade of being a farrier or a blacksmith or whatever it is. It's like, okay, but that passes quickly and people move on and they do other things. So that will happen here. That we will no longer at some point have taxi drivers because we're going to just have driverless cars everywhere. And, okay, we got problems with that. It doesn't always work well. You can find plenty of videos on YouTube. But, man, I was out in L.A. and I'm watching these driverless cars, these Waymo cars everywhere. And I'm like, damn, this works pretty well. And I'm watching my Uber driver. We drove in a Tesla from our hotel to the airport down in Miami, and the Uber driver didn't do anything at all. And he was sitting there looking at the screen and watching everything, but I don't know, maybe he was sleeping. I don't think he was sleeping, but in fairness, I couldn't see his eyes, but I don't think he was. It was early in the morning though, so I gotta wonder. But I'm like, okay, at some point, we just take care of all that. And so we're not going to look right now and be like, oh my God, what do you do? The taxi drivers. But in the future, we won't look back and think, oh God, how sad that is. It'll be like, okay, that's what it is. So, Musk made an interesting point that before Ford released the Model T and made motoring cheaper, everyone traveled by horse and cart, train, etc. And there was a whole industry behind it. Yeah, a whole industry. And then it just slowly started to die away. And so that's how we roll. That's how life is. Then within a short period of time, you didn't see it at all. So well, there is an opportunity to skip on human connection, but there are greater opportunities. Man, like human connection, for example, for me, right here, I get messages on various platforms. I'm very active on probably about 7 or 8 different platforms. I get messages from people all over the world. Now, mind you, that's a little bit different because I'm broadcasting, but I got messages from people before I was streaming class. I mean, I was connected to lots and lots of people. So it's like, in some ways, the connection, and I have deep connections with people. We turn the cameras on and we talk, and someone's on the other side of the planet, but it's a really deep connection. And someone might say like, oh, well, how can that possibly be deep connection? Well, it is, because it is. And because I feel very much the same way as when I go next door and I have a deep connection with my neighbors. So, and how am I going to have a more spontaneous human connection when there isn't anyone with you? Well, for me, first off, we're never going to lose human connection. We're always going to have neighbors, so I'm always going to be connected to my neighbors. And there are some people that just sit in front of their computers and they never talk to anybody, but that's not most of us. Most of us are balancing things out. And most of us are probably, just like right now, we're connected here in this space. Okay, well, you could do this every day of the week, but that's not going to mean that you don't have any human connections around you. You still have all that, so we're going to have that. It's pretty cool. I think I think we'll just slide into a different kind of balance. Yeah. Okay, what else do we have, Matt? Somebody else have another question that I could respond to. I don't know what the Mississippi model is, by the way. I'm curious. Big fan of the channel, but respectfully disagree. I think that we will get a new subset of the economy that just like made by hand will be made without AI. Yeah, no, for sure, man. No. Frenchy film flan. Flim flam. No, for sure, man. We're already seeing that. And we're seeing a kickback, right? But eventually, we won't be able to know what's AI and what isn't. And eventually, at some point in time, it won't really matter. And that's kind of the thing. Just like people only, 200 years before the advent of television, if you wanted to see some kind of production, you had to go to a play. Or you had to go to something that reflected a play. And then once we had televisions, that started to shift. Right, so what is that? Like 80 years ago or so, and then at some point in time, how many people go to a play? How many of you go to a play on a regular basis, or go where you see some kind of live event happening? Very few, I'm sure. So, a few of you, yes, but very few. And I can say that because here, even in a college town, where we're going to have a much higher degree of these kinds of things, we just don't have a whole lot going on. So, and so we just appreciate the interactions that are mediated by our cameras and our screens. And so at some point in time, it just didn't matter that much to us that we didn't see something live, that everything is mediated by the screen. And at some point in time, it won't matter to people that it was created by AI and not human beings. And we will be surprised at how young people in 50 years will be surprised at how much humans actually created without the use of any kind of computers, as they're consuming all sorts of things based on computers, computer generated material. I mean, that's just what it is. I'm not saying that's great or it's wonderful, but I have a feeling that's what it's going to be. Okay. Deal a meal. I love that. AI is saying, no, it's Ian said, AI is saying it's fair, or critics are saying they pull out bad students to inflate the scores. Oh, this is back to the other thing. It's hard. No. I have no doubt about that. Schools, well, we've busted schools for doing that. That they find ways to not include the lowest level of students so that the school doesn't receive a failing grade. Well, if the schools look, first off, the school's receiving a failing grade. And, wait, hang on. I might have to close my window here. Hold tight. Oh man, that's my neighbor. my neighbor across the street started cutting our lawn last year when he was 12 or maybe 11. I don't know, but I love watching him out there doing the GetSum J. Thanks for that. Oh man. Oh yeah, fair. Yeah, exactly. He's 71 years old. That's the point. And somewhere out there are 20-year-old farriers. Well, I know they are. I actually had a student who was a farrier part-time and was getting her degree, but when she was getting a degree in like animal science, but she was going back to being a farrier. I mean, that was her 100% going to be her work. And so she graduated when she was probably like 24, 25. Because she was a little bit older, but that's her work. And today she's probably as a farrier, so yeah, that's pretty cool. Wait, I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, my neighbor, yeah. So it's pretty cool because I think back. I started cutting lawns when I was 9. Maybe he was 10 when he started last year. I don't remember, but I started when I was 9, And I remember, like pushed the lawnmower, and the lawnmower was up above my head because the handles, because I couldn't reach them. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I love that. Yeah, dude. Yeah, you can go down a rabbit hole watching farrier videos, man. Things like that are really cool. There's nothing like when I see them pull off a horseshoe, and then they pry it off, and then they pull out the nails, and then they just start digging away at the hoof and leveling it out and digging into all the stuff that's built up inside the hoof. That's cool, man. Yeah, it's pretty. It's watch one of those videos, man. It's really addicting, stuff like that, especially if you're a Virgo, by the way. You can. Yeah, blacksmithing. Hey, listen, man. My wife called. She was actually going to join this course. We passed a sign on the side of the road, said, "Hey, blacksmith lessons," or blacksmith a course, like it was like a 4-part course. And she called to join. It's just like, wow, what is it? What is this, man? I want to just see what this is, because Lori does a lot of stuff like that. But I forget why she didn't do that. I forget what it was. It was happening at a time that she couldn't, but it's pretty cool, man. Blacksmithing is really, really cool. It's all cool. Everything is cool. My God. Break horses 15 ahead, man. Break horses. I always felt like, okay, you all who are horse people, but I always felt like that was like, it's like breaking it's breaking the will. I understand why you have to do it, or I don't know, but I always felt like it was, it's such a difficult verb, and yeah. Anyway, breaking, we're going to break you down. It's like breaking students. In a way, that's what we're doing in kindergarten. Kindergartners, we're breaking people's will. It's like boot camp for students, right? It's like basic training in the military. You got to bring these people in, these young, mostly young. Well, they are always younger. And you got to just make them be part of the team, and you got to break them down. You got to just rewire their personalities so they really see themselves as a member of this team, as a soldier, on a team. That's true in every society. And so you're breaking in a way their will to be independent and be different, and it's pretty intense. And you got to have that, right? Certainly for soldiering, if your job is to send people out and put at some level their lives on the line, even though most soldiering is not that. Most soldiering, it's not at all. But it requires you to be a member of the team, or the team breaks down. I mean, I'm not saying, but first of all, and I say that because most soldiers never see combat. Well, in some armies, I suppose they do, but most don't. And most of the time that you would spend in the military is not spent in direct combat or even indirect combat. It doesn't mean it doesn't have all these other things associated with it, or it's not dangerous, or one thing after another, but it's not, I'm just making that point. But you still got to be a member of the team, because if you break things down, it's a problem. Just like our society right now, many societies are very divided in so many different ways, and that's just not a good thing, man. You got to get people kind of on the same page. So Mississippi was one of the earlier states to shift away from the balanced literacy method for teaching and reading and phonics. That is probably where we have had their success. That's interesting. Yeah, you know what? Mississippi has made a shift. I was reading this the other day. Mississippi has historically had the lowest. They score the lowest in educational measures. I mean, it's just, the highest rates of illiteracy and problems and one thing after another. And a lot of it is just Mississippi's also one of the poorest states in the union. But the other day I was reading something about Mississippi. Three. If you're from Mississippi, I think you say you do it in 3 syllables, right? I'm not from Mississippi, but that's what I hear from people who are. Anyway, or maybe you're just from the South, from Alabama. You probably also say Mississippi. Anyway, I saw some stuff, and I was kind of educational stuff, and I was like, wait, hang on a second. Mississippi isn't at the bottom. Like, wait, what's going on there? It was so anyway, that I'll look into that a little more. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, what do we got? I learned sewing. No, I only make quilts and covers. I stopped buying them handmade. Yeah, well, okay. Penn State has a good hyperbarics department. One of their docs. Penn State actually has this hyperbarics. I knew someone who was they have a couple tanks and who was really involved in that. Kind of cool. Okay. Okay, what else do we have? Another question, man. Does anybody have a question? Because who would be nice? Well, in terms of engineers, this is, of course, one of the issues with H-1B visas, that, we're just poaching the best engineer. We're poaching engineers from other countries, and sometimes some of the best engineers. Of course, that's how we've been able to, kick this technological revolution off in the way that we did. But, maybe that's going to shift. A lot of things are going to shift with AI, and that maybe so many of the things that engineers focus their attention on, they won't have to focus on, and then they can focus on other things. And then we won't have a shortage of engineers. It certainly is happening. Man, I've been using LLMs a fair amount recently just to research things, to study things. And, man, it's deeply fascinating how advanced. Oh man, hang on. This is my guy. This is my neighbor who's at my door. Yeah, I'm gonna let it go. I'm not gonna go. Okay, so the degree to which I can just talk to these large language models, right? LLMs. So ChatGPT and Claude, and I use a lot this. Hang on, man. I use Gemini a fair amount. I have the advanced Gemini system, and man, I just have a conversation, and it just takes me to these places where I can't. I could look it all up on my own, but holy smokes, man, is it profound? Doing equations and doing modeling and so on. So there is no doubt that what is coming at us is Sam checks phone and blows off neighbor for us. I did. Yeah. Well, he's only 11, so whatever. He can take it. His ego can get back. He didn't know I was looking at him on the phone. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. I'm quite stunned. You don't necessarily know what's right and wrong, but I don't know what people say, like, well, sometimes you don't get the right answer. I'm like, well, you don't get the right answer on Google. If I do a search, if I go to the library and start digging through, data like books and research books and God knows whatever it is, encyclopedias, whatever I'm looking at, I don't know that I have the right information. How do I know that? Somebody wrote the Encyclopedia Britannica. Each year people were updating it. I had a neighbor, he lived next door to my cousin, which was just around the corner. But he was this kid at a very young age. He was a genius level kid, and he would find things in the Encyclopedia Britannica that were wrong, and he would send things by letter to the company, and they'd fix them. And by the way, when we were in Chicago last September, taking a ride on the river We saw like the big building where the Encyclopedia Britannica was. Really pretty amazing. Chicago's amazing, man, for building. Holy smokes, the architecture. You take these river cruises and you go around and you see these buildings that are phenomenal. Anyway, so people back then, what are you have all the information in the encyclopedia. We had it in my house. It was cool, but it was limited. Now it's unlimited. But how do I know that I get the right information on Google? So if I use Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or something, I don't know. People say, well, you don't know if it's right. Well, yeah, okay, they told me something that's wrong. Yeah, I got it, but so did Google when I was looking something up. And I picked this thing, and I should have picked that one, and I wasn't careful about where the data came from, and I didn't understand the data, and I didn't go to the research study telling me why it is that we chose normal blood pressure in 60-year-old men to be this right here, this and this, like how we got to that, and is that really normal? Well, you got to look and see what it's all about, and see, you got to do the research and why it is that they changed it. And it's like, well, how do you do that? And I can ask ChatGPT. It's like, well, hang on. So what is it normal? Has it always been that way? No, it hasn't. They changed. Okay, what inspired them to change the blood pressure readings, the normal blood pressure readings for 60-year-old men? And then it gives me a bunch of stuff. I'm like, hang on, that doesn't make sense. You got to go further. Okay, well, how about, then it says, okay, well, how about this? And I'm like, okay, yeah, but, okay, that piece right there, go back to that study that was done. Like, who's in that? Tell me something about that study. And then it's just rolling stuff out. And so I can't be 100% that I can't know that it's correct or whatever, but damn, it's pretty phenomenal, man. It's pretty phenomenal. All right. Yeah, you know what? I do that, Axel. Axel Coleman. Sometimes I take answers from one to the other, or I do actually two at the same time and see what they have to say. I got, Gemini into an argument with ChatGPT, and it was kind of cool. And look, the point being, for me, these things are valuable because how much I depend on information, that I want information. So that's just part of. I'm thinking about these LLMs all the time. And Jeff, by the way, I don't know if you're watching, but I am. I am looking at the fact that we're at 479, almost 480 subscribers. It's so fascinating how things just level off. The way, growth of a channel like this or something, it sort of goes up and then levels off and then a little blip and then a little blip. Yeah, it's so interesting. Anyway. Okay. So anyway, Jeff, yeah, I just saw that. All right, any other questions? And we're getting to an hour and a half. Some great lectures online at the Turing Institute to understand history of science of these models. Yeah. I'm assuming that's the Alan Turing Institute. Yeah, there are so many science lectures that are really profound. Copilot, you know what? People say, isn't Copilot the one that's connected to Microsoft? And why is it that everything Microsoft does, it just feels like it sucks? Like Teams and, yeah, it just feels like, what happened, man? what happened? God, it's so fascinating. Is Copilot connected to Microsoft? Is that it? Yeah, Microsoft. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, why is that every time I've never met anyone who says they love Teams. We've adopted Teams here at Penn State. I don't use it for anything at all. I go outside of the Penn State system, but when I have to, it just feels like it's it's just a struggle to climb uphill to figure it out. And then I finally get in Teams, and I'm in some meeting with people who use Teams all the time, and almost every one of them says, almost across the board, consistently say that, yeah, I don't really like Teams. I'm like, well, who likes it, man? Yeah. Oh, my God. That's the question. What happened? All right. Wait. Yeah, it's so bizarre, man. Yeah, Microsoft had lost the edge. Well, you can't maintain. Microsoft got us to this place. And you get to this place, and then you can't necessarily. It's like bands, like I'm pretty well versed on the music that musicians are putting out, right? Who wrote some really amazing stuff back in the day, and then they put something new out, like Boss Skaggs puts out some new recordings, and I'm like, Boss, man, that's not a Boss recording. That's pretty lame. There's nothing in that. Now, then I think, well, maybe if it got played on the radio over and over and over again, it would become an earworm, and then I would come to like it, But I don't know. So there's a way in which Microsoft had its peak, at its time, all the creativity, and now it's all other people who are more flexible and more vibrant can like bang out these systems in a way that's just very different, So yeah, so whatever. Okay. Okay. Well, Microsoft got us to word processing, okay, which is pretty amazing for people who need to write documents. Microsoft got us to Excel, okay. Data management. I mean, Excel is the original and premier instrument in basic kind of data analysis. It's very simple, and it allows people to do things. Those two things really. PowerPoint is like, yeah, it's okay for presentations. It kind of helps, but you don't need PowerPoint. You could put a Word document up and just keep scrolling up. You don't have to do the PowerPoint thing. But Word, we had WordPerfect before, right? Maybe WordPerfect would have been perfectly fine, but Microsoft won, and it won with Excel. And so I would say it got us that. And I don't necessarily, it's just for productivity. It's profound, right? So, yeah, I would say that. What type of music I listen to? Well, man, here, I'll pull up my Sonos. Today I was just listening to Alice in Chains. I was on Reddit, and they said, like, hey, what are the greatest rock singers of all time? And people kept mentioning this guy from Alice in Chains, who I don't really know Alice in Chains. I know some of the music, but I don't know the guy. And I'm like, dude, yeah, I got Zeppelin in here, man. But I didn't. So I'm like, I got to listen, really pay attention to Alice in Chains and see if this guy has a decent voice. And I couldn't hear shit, actually. Of all the Alice in Chains music, I couldn't hear anything. So other people were saying, like Freddie Mercury and, Ann Wilson. There are all sorts of names. Robert Plant that got out there, but, but I wasn't. But yeah, so anyway, that's all. So I was looking at that. All right, so hang on, let's look. Let's see if I can pull up. So here, Tool. So here's what I've been listening to recently. Tool. This just happens to be a lot of hard rock stuff. AC/DC, Rush. These are just things. Mana. But then I listened. Hang on. Let me pull up Pandora and see what my stations are here that I kind of. Okay, here's Government Mule. I'm kind of into that. Mana, which is a Latin rock station. I had this on Pandora. I was listening to this Bob Seger radio channel. Dream Theater. When I'm working at my desk, it's a lot of hard rock. But at night, I listen to jazz at night fundamentally. Here's Guatemalan radio. Here's Sierra Leone radio. Here's South Africa radio. Mexican station. Here's rock and roll in Espanol. Here's radio station from Tokyo. Steel Pulse, Bob Marley, Afro funk and Afro beat. I listen to that. So these are just the things over the course of the past several weeks that I've been kind of listening to a lot. Hip hop, old school hip hop. I'm really into hip hop of the 90s in particular, and I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, there we go. That's some stuff I've been listening to. There's the Who, HU, really intense. Some musicians out of Mongolia, and hard, like heavy metal, heavy rock band. The Who, the Who, the HU. Look them up. Just see a photo of these guys. They're really, really, really intense. Anyway, I'm going to Mongolia in November, and that's one of my. If they're there, I'm going to be in the capital. They live in the capital, so I'm definitely want to meet them, man, or try to see them or something. God, yeah, the Who's they're really cool. You got to look them up. Just hop on, open up a window and whatever browser you're on and look up the Who and look at some photos of them. Man, they are like really. Periphery. I've heard of Periphery. I'm really into prog metal groups. Obviously, the Dream Theater and so on. Dave Matthews. I'm definitely into Dave Matthews. I never got into Foo Fighters. Just wasn't my thing. I see, but some old school bands that I really like a lot. I'll reach, obviously, Pink Floyd. I can never not. Anytime I need something, I can just pull up Pink Floyd. Transatlantic, yeah, that's the name of a band, right? I think I've come across them, actually. Vanilla Ice. I ran around with Vanilla Ice. No, that dude. Nah, man, he was like, Vanilla Ice is he was his own character. That's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah. Who's coming here to town at some point, maybe in the summertime or in the fall, who's Weird Al Yankovic, who's actually quite a good musician. I didn't know the guy actually toured, but anyway, yeah, I listened to a lot of jazz, a lot of classical. I used to listen to a lot more classical, and then I kind of stopped. And I think that because, I just dig in. All right, listen, man. Bela Fleck. I was into Bela Fleck for a hot minute. Oh, his first 3 albums, or CDs, whatever it was. Their first 3 CDs. I listened to those all the time, man. That's if you're into banjo at all. Bela Fleck is, the Wooten brothers. Man, they're quite astounding musicians. Wolf Totem. Man, that's pretty cool. All right. Of course, Michael Jackson. That's just a given, man. If you came of age in the 80s and early 90s, Michael Jackson's, or the 70s, I should say. When I was a kid, Michael Jackson was the person. Man. Oh God, what an amazing artist at so many levels. Okay. Listen, I'm going to go. So tomorrow we're actually going to have a class about death. Just a couple students just wrote some things in the volunteer form, and I just felt like, let's just see what we're thinking about in different cultures. So we're going to talk about from different cultures. So that'll be good. So anyway, that's where we're at. Next class. So I think I'm going to hop off here and go track down my dear wife, take care of a few things, and then move on with life. So enjoy, everybody, and really appreciate it. And we'll be on tomorrow. See what we do. Have a lovely day. Thanks, everybody.